So welcome everybody. Tonight we have a very special guest, although I think all of our guests are very special, but tonight I think you may know who he is. He is the author of Beyond the Map's Edge and also the creator of the Treasure Hunt. And you can find him on treasure.quest, and he also is on Golden Greed. So welcome, Justin.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Yeah, we appreciate you on here. And for our regular viewers, you probably are noticing something different. Lara is sitting next to me. We had some technical difficulties, so bear with us.
But the show must go on.
The show must go on. So Lara's going to sort of kick this one off, and then I'll be joining her. So Lara, take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric and Justin. We're so excited to have some time to spend with you tonight, and to dive into your journey and your story and your book and the impact that it's had on all of us. So thanks for coming on.
It was a delight to meet you guys in Vegas, and I'm happy to be on the show.
Yeah, it was so fun to meet you in person. First, that is not often the case when we're talking with someone. But so admittedly, I'm going to confess that I picked up your book for the first time about a week and a half ago. And so we have been very focused on TTI for, almost a little over a year now. And so while I was certainly aware we had watched Golden Greed, I hadn't yet dug into your book. It was sitting on our shelf. And my admiration for your writing, my experience in the book has been absolutely incredible. Like, your way with words blew my mind. I'm a reader. I love research. I love digging in. I love the artistry of words. And I have to say, well done. Like, extremely well done with the writing.
I mean, that's very kind of you to say. It would have been far worse off had it not been for my editor extraordinaire, Matt DeMoss. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's the stories, number one, but it is also the crafting of the words. And I would imagine, although you had an editor, much of this came from you. I took down a number of my favorite quotes, and I was hoping we could use these as a springboard to talk a little bit about your story, if you don't mind.
That sounds like a great plan.
Okay. Because initially, here's one that stuck with me. Anyone who can talk about an oil change and use je ne sais quoi in the same paragraph, like, what's with that, Justin?
Well, it's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig. I just, for whatever reason, that story had stuck out in my mind for a number of years. And I think everybody has stories in their life that are worth telling. And I encourage everybody at some point. I think everyone should try and write a bit of a memoir. It's just a very interesting experience to undertake. But yeah, for that story in particular, it's only so much you can do with it, but I appreciate that.
It was an incredible little tale. Every single one of these vignettes. I mean, the way that you painted your what I, maybe say is characters, but really your family members, your friends, the people who've had an influence on your life, your mom, your dad, your grandparents. My goodness, what a beautiful tribute to their lives as well. So, a couple of the chapters that had quotes that literally I was laughing out loud every few minutes. The Gracie Grail was a great one, I thought. You were talking about how a castle eloped with a yard sale, displays that look like they've been arranged by a caffeinated raccoon who watched one too many episodes of Antiques Roadshow. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Well, if you've ever been to Gracie's, you'd understand. It is quite the scene.
Yeah.
And I think what I appreciate most about Gracie's is how little it's changed. It does feel like it's just stuck in time.
Yeah.
Almost to a point where it's uncanny. I really enjoy spending time there, and it's every time I go, I find a different nook or cranny to explore that I just didn't even realize was there before.
Yeah. So Gracie's, set is the setting for one of these chapters. But one of the things that stuck with me about Gracie's in particular is we talk about a map, right? A map that influenced kind of your perspectives, I think, on treasure hunting. You said, when I unfold the map now, I understand what guided the cartographer's trembling hand, the same force that filled Gracie's shelves, the same fever that keeps me hunting, this desperate belief that we can somehow catch time in a collected net of things. And I love that. So talk to me a bit about, we read through your story, the genesis of treasure hunting way back when you're a kid and how that all evolved. And then throughout kind of your growth, your story, it becomes a tale of humanity, of the lives lived, the people that you intersect with, the experiences. And I think that's one of the things I love about that quote is we see it getting bigger than individual stories. We see this thread pulling through all of it. Was that your hope as you set out to write this book that we could all enjoy? I mean, it's so much more than a treasure hunt. The treasure, he's going to hit that, is an incredible part. But this is such a wonderful legacy.
It's really interesting that you put it this way. I mean, I've had a lot of people write to me, and I've spoken with a lot of people that have enjoyed the book. But I don't think anyone has articulated it quite the way that you had. And that's actually precisely what I had in mind. So I appreciate the observation. That quote in particular, I think my goal was to resonate with a fellow collector, and I think the collectors of the world would say that, at its root, that is part of the impetus for collecting is to try and freeze time and to be a part of history at a whole different level than just reading about it. And I think that tangible aspect really strikes a chord with so many people. And I have to wonder if that maybe is the basis of a lot of maybe people that become hoarders over time, is kind of this maybe going into obsessive territory about trying to freeze time. It's an interesting concept to me, but thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So obsessing, because you said it, I'm going to ask, you have this incredible personality that dials in on a focus and is unrelenting to let go of it. From my observation from the book, you set your mind to something and you are full on into it. And we see that throughout your growing up years, and
the
then
missile base.
Yeah. And then
which I may or may not talk about later.
Right. So talk to me about, how that has served you well. And for those of us who tend to do that equally, how sometimes maybe you have to try to step back from it.
Yeah, I think maybe a software developer would say they're not sure if this is a feature or a bug, but it is a core part of my identity. And I've just found time and again that there are certain topics that tend to draw me in, and everything else just kind of becomes noise that I tune out. And, most recently it's actually been with the company that I started, and I felt like there was a need to be met there, and here I am. So I think it's something that has been ingrained in me from a very young age. And there's probably a couple different reasons for that. One is maybe there's a genetic component to it. I don't know, but certainly environment. All the strong figures in my life have been incredibly hard workers. And it's strange to think, because when I was very young, I thought, wow, my dad is the hardest worker I've ever known. But the more I got to know my grandparents, it's like, wow, they work even harder. And so it's like this strange culmination. I have to wonder, like 3 generations back, like, gosh, I can't imagine, but I like to think that maybe they worked even harder than that. So it just probably something that was instilled in me from a pretty young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I can't help but ask and think to myself as I'm reading through the chapters, what is hidden amongst these stories that I need to be taking note of if I want to be successful in the hunt? Now, I think there's an approach, and people have likely asked you this before, but I'm, again, coming into it a little bit of a blank slate. We know that the poem, which Eric will likely talk about in a little while, is critical. But as we're thinking about the narrative and some of the things that you're talking about throughout that, should we be tuning into anything in particular? I don't want you to give me clues because we're going to figure it out on our own. But is that a critical part of coming to an understanding of you and this hunt?
I think it is true to say that there are certain, whether you call it themes or frequencies or certain aspects that I think are very key to the treasure hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I can't call them out specifically, but
Right.
I think you guys are having some good thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you say rules are merely starting points of negotiation, and a well-placed loophole is worth its weight in weeples, right?
That was a great story, by the way.
Yes, that was an amazing story. And,
Brilliant.
And you
Brilliant.
do touch on periodically kind of this having to be willing to go kind of find a way around, to think outside of the boundaries. Do you feel like that is a trait that's necessary for someone to be a successful treasure hunter?
Well, I have to be a little cautious in this answer. So my mom always said I'd make a great attorney. I don't know. I think there's a saying about this when, arguing with an attorney is like wrestling with a pig. After the first hour, you start to realize the pig likes it. I like the act of arguing. I think it's really interesting. Not that I'm, just an aggressive or argumentative person, but I like the merits of an argument in order to uncover deeper truths. Now, I'm certainly by no means saying that people need to go and break the law or anything like that in order to find the treasure. But I think thinking outside of the box is valuable.
Yeah. And I was certainly not inferring we are breaking the law, nor doing anything dangerous. I mean, because that is a risk, right? When you're putting a hunt out there for people, asking people to get out into the wilderness and be searching, a risk that people won't be cautious and follow the guidance that you've given. Certainly you having a great familiarity with the outdoors and still having these bear encounters that actually have me terrified about going out. So talk to me about your guidance about safety and how, as you were putting your hunt together, did that strike you in a certain way that you might be encouraging people to go out and do things that, we know with Forest Fence, there was some tragedy, right?
Now, before you answer that, remember you're talking to a certified safety professional here. And I do applaud the fact that you did put all these guidelines in there, or not more directives, right? Because, managing people in a controlled environment in the workplace can be challenging enough, but when you put things out to the world, it's even harder, as we saw during the pandemic, so to speak, right? So, how was that?
Yeah, I think Forest Treasure Hunt was a good case study, and I appreciated it in the sense that I think growing up in the outdoors and having that experience oftentimes can lead you to take for granted what a lot of people that haven't had that experience, how they experience it. So I think it's so important to keep that in mind when you're putting together something like a treasure hunt, where you're encouraging people to do what might be uncomfortable things for them. And education is just such a foundational component of that. And, I dedicated, I think, pretty much a full chapter in the book to talk about the things that can go wrong, and to kind of use it as a guide or a lesson for people to understand that you need to be prepared for a lot of different things in the wilderness, because it is not forgiving. And, the weather changes on a dime. You get excited, you might go further than you planned on going, and over preparation really is the name of the game. Yeah. And I think the biggest, I wouldn't call it wisdom by any means, but the biggest tidbit of information that I could provide is, if you're uncomfortable with the wilderness, go with somebody that is comfortable, that has spent a lot of time doing these outdoor activities. It's worth your time and effort to find somebody like that, because it's a great mentor and it's a good checks and balances system. I mean, I know that there are people that are searching for the treasure that have gone out solo, and that's okay. But that's just another case where you need to be even more prepared than you would with a partner. Sure. So, a lifeline is really critical in these situations.
Yeah, because we know we've been boots on the ground for John's treasure going on, and it's a whole different world when you get out there. As soon as you step into the woods, there's a lot of things that could go wrong, even on a relatively. There is no routine, hike or anything. You always have something to worry about, whether it be wildlife or even slipping on a rock or something like that, because you're out in the open, or you're out far away from any type. More likely than not, you won't have cell service, and if something happens and you're a mile or two out there, it could be pretty dicey.
It's true, and you see these stories of people, like, they'll just wander off, not more than 100 feet off, say, the Appalachian Trail, and it's really easy to get turned around out there, and it can have dire consequences. I mean, I've embarrassed myself plenty of times. I go out to an area and say, with my vehicle, and park it somewhere, and I wouldn't go very far and turn around. I'm like, where did I park? And it takes some time to track it down, and you can actually be remarkably close and not even realize it. So it's a real danger, and you can't always rely on self-service to save you.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
That is the truth. So I have two more topics, I think, or a couple more quotes that I wanted to hit, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eric for some of his content. But in the chapter in the section called The Treasure, you say, the ultimate puzzle I discovered wasn't one to be solved with a map or a decoder ring, but with an open heart and willingness to venture into the unknown, embracing the journey for its own sake, with all its twists, turns, and the inevitable dead ends, which I thought was very poignant for sure. And it made me curious about your experience as a treasure hunter, versus your experience as the creator of the hunt, and now sitting back and kind of observing the hunt, and kind of how that plays out in terms of that kind of deeper existential connection that you're referring to here, I think.
I think the best treasure hunt creators come from people that were treasure hunters themselves. I really think you have to have that in-depth, full arc experience, beginning to end, of a treasure hunt, in order to really pull off something that makes sense for people to search for. And I certainly had that experience. I'm certainly by no means a treasure hunt creator expert. I don't know if there is such a thing. Yeah. It's such a strange term to me. I don't really identify as a creator per se. I mean, I guess that is the correct term, but at this point, I think I'm fairly convinced I make a much better treasure hunter than treasure hunt creator.
Right.
Mainly because I mean, it's probably fair to say I enjoy the hunting a little bit more than the hiding. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think about how I could expand on this. At its core, it's what I wanted to impart on into people is that I had an experience, and I hope that they get even a fraction of the experience that I had, because that alone, I think, is worth it to me, and I hope it's worth it to them as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, my last thing on my list that I really wanted to talk about was Tucker, because I cried at the end. We are such dog people, and
hence our logo.
Yeah, that's our dog Biscuit, who is right here at my feet. And you talk in a couple different places about the connection that you guys had. As we drove home, the landscape blurring past our windows, I couldn't shake the feeling that we stumbled upon the edge of something vast. It wasn't about the bronze or even the feat of canine olfactory prowess. It was about communication, trust, and that peculiar alchemy that occurs when two species come together in pursuit of a shared goal. And so I loved that integration of him into your hunt and that experience you had together. So I just wanted to hear more, because I'm just not ready to let him go out of the story in my mind yet, because I was right there. He was with you for some time. How long did you have Tucker?
Yeah, I got Tucker, I think it was in 2012, and he was really a core part of the search experience from day one. He had more responsibility, if you will, over time, by virtue of his training, and I think him becoming more invested in it in his own way. But yeah, I look back on that, and I honestly cannot say who had a better time out searching, me or him. And I think that's the way it should be. I'm a dog person through and through, and I feel like there's a lot of dogs in households out there that could probably use more adventure themselves. And so I like to think that this is something that's available for all forms of life, not just the humans.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Have you found a new friend that has come into your world?
No, I have a cat. His name is Woody. And he's a good around the house companion. He likes to hang out on the porch and so on. But in terms of an outdoor adventure partner, I think it takes time, to find the right fit and the right time.
So on that note, if we were hunting with Biscuit, our dog, and he loves to come on the trails with us, he is a scent hound and he cannot let go of the scent. And we were looking for your particular treasure, would we be able to bring him with us? Is it in an accessible to dogs place?
Yeah, that's been a question posed a number of times. So the reason I generally hesitate to answer these types of questions is just general volatility. Like, if rules change in the future, people look back on this and say, well, you said it at this time. And it's like, well, it was true right now, but things can change. But to the best of my knowledge, there shouldn't be anything that should preclude a canine companion from joining you on the treasure hunt.
All right. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's great, because we have run into instances where there's no dogs allowed on different trails, and we just love taking them. And if we can, we can drive the distance. I think our limit's usually up to like 10 hours, just for the sake of time and things like that. We do like taking them, but if we take a longer vacation, we have did longer trips with them, and just found a place to stay that accepted dogs, because he loves. I think our first boots on the ground, he was still a pup and he really did well. So
yeah, I think dogs can enhance the journey in so many ways. I mean, and of course there's, as you're mentioning, like a certain level of responsibility when you get out there with safety with animals too. I mean, especially if you have something like a bear encounter, I like to think that most people know their dogs pretty well, but there are certain personalities that can, take off after a rabbit and never look back. So yeah, I mean, I think that is another thing to consider as you bring your pets out into the wilderness, is safety for them as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
We always keep him on leash just for that fact.
We don't trust him yet. He's not quite that old. He's not yet a year. So,
I think I actually built an insecurity into Tucker in retrospect. And I think it really started when he was very young. I take him out on the trails in Washington State, and we would just play this hide and seek game, and he really took to that. But it also, I think, in a way, it wasn't me looking after him. It was him looking after me, because he'd wonder, when am I going to go hide? And so it was, in retrospect, maybe it sounds a little diabolical, but he, I think it was a bit of an insecurity where he really wanted to keep tabs on me, because he knew that I could go out hide at any point and he'd have to track me down. So he liked that game a lot. And I think that kind of pulled double duty in the sense that he was more responsible.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's great.
Unintended outcome maybe, but it worked. Yeah. All right. So we've started talking about the hunt. Do you want to kind of switch gears to that rather than biography per se?
Yeah, I would. I had some, things that, interest me that I would like to know. You obviously, you started out as treasure hunter, right? I mean, you named it in your book. You were going out to the missile bases, almost getting put in the hole because you wandered off. I thought it was brilliant. And by the way, I probably wouldn't have the courage to pull that off. So kudos to you.
There's a fine line between courage and stupidity. So I don't know where I lie on that spectrum.
But, that treasure hunter to treasure designer transition, we sort of talked about that earlier. How did that process sort of come to fruition?
At what point did you make that decision that I'm going to hide a treasure after this?
Yeah, I know I'm not alone in this regard, in the sense that there were many people searching for forest treasure who felt that if they found it, they would want to pay it forward in some way and rehide it, or at least a portion of it. And I was one of those people. But it was just pretty wild how it all came together at the end. And I think probably more than anything, it was just sheer willpower in order to make it work. I'm trying to recall the exact moment where I solidified this thinking, and I think it was in the only conversation over the. I guess I had a few conversations over the phone with Jack Stoof, the Forest Treasure Finder, but it was in one of those conversations where it really solidified it for me. And it's actually kind of strange now that I look back on it, but it was something he said that struck me. And it was that he is not a collector. And he had no interest in the physical treasure. It was monetary, which I can understand. But a part of me, it just really got to me. And I started thinking about this, and it goes back to, where we were talking about Gracie's and collecting things. And I think I got worried in that moment that maybe, gosh, is this a generational thing? Like, are we trending toward more, more transient existence where we are not as, fettered with physical items? Or what is this? Because it was so foreign to me. So I'm very much the opposite. And so I guess maybe a part of it was trying to freeze time in my own way and say that there's something out there worth searching for. And now, in terms of dates, I don't recall. I'm actually really bad with dates, but it was during negotiations where I was talking about buying the full Fen treasure.
Yeah, no, I find it odd that somebody would get into treasure hunting just for the money. And I know that at first that might sound, well, why else would, holistically it would sound like that. But although we all think we would get it, and by confirmation of him getting it, it did work out for him, but that is not the norm. Honestly, you probably would have a greater chance at, gambling or a lottery or something like that. And not to say that you can't find it, and it shouldn't. But I guess my point is that, you know, to us at least, because we're new to this. I mean, yeah, when I was a kid, I grew up by the woods, although the woods weren't that vast. To me, it was. And, you know, finding, abandoned car that was stripped and burnt out in the woods was like finding a pirate ship that was, washed upon the shore, and, so that component was always there. So, and also through this whole experience, back up a little bit. What I generally tell people is that, if you were to find a treasure, that would be great. You would have the monetary aspect of it, and it would be exciting, but that will sort of fade out. Whether the excitement of it will fade out, and you'll eventually spend it, depending on the person, and then it's gone. Whereas, the experiences we felt along the way, and this is why we continue to pursue it, and now doing your stuff as well, is not only the friendships you meet, but how it sort of changes the trajectory of your path. I mean, I'll be 53 this year, and I would never have thought my life would have taken this drastic of a direction of change. In my whole life, this is probably one of the biggest influences that's been on me. So to sort of minimize it by saying, well, I'm just doing it for the treasure. I mean, it's sort of like planning your retirement when you're 10, right? You may think you want to be a professional video game player, Pac-Man or whatever, but that's your 10-year-old brain saying it, right? And then when you get older, and I don't know. Anyway.
So the joy in the journey, I think, is where you're going. The joy in the journey. So I would love to hear a bit more from you about what was your motivation. So we know that his was, man, I'm going to get a payout if I find this. What was your initial motivation for getting into the forest fen hunt?
Yeah, I think a well-constructed treasure hunt is the encapsulation of dreams and hopes. And it is something that is rare in today's world. And so for me, I think it's different for each person. And for me, it was just a very perfect storm or catalyst of all these components coming together. I mean, certainly you can't ignore the monetary aspect. That might be, the initial catalyst for some people. But I think for many, it becomes more, and they don't realize it in the beginning, but it does. And by more, I mean, for me, it was a grand puzzle. It was a true challenge that is the intersection between mind and body. And you really get that full featured experience where you're engaging the mind while you're out searching physically, and truly thinking about your surroundings as opposed to just moving through them. I mean, I think at some point I had mentioned this concept of lantern vision, where, when you move through an environment, it's like the lantern is moving with you and you're just seeing what's in your vicinity. And that actually can be, I think that's something we lose over time. When you're a kid and you walk around every corner, it's new, and you're not accustomed to it, and your mind doesn't have that that mold kind of built in where you just filter. And the lack of filtering is such an interesting way to look at the world. And I'm sure, if you probably took a bunch of mushrooms or something, you'd probably get the same effect. But I like to think that treasure hunting can kind of compete with that, in the sense that it forces you to look at the world differently. And I think there's a lot of power behind that.
Yeah, I think it strips the filters that we get when we become an adult and have to put some of those filters on, whether it be our job or whatever like that. Right. And then we can't see the things that once inspired us, and as when we're younger.
That's a great way of putting it. Completely agree. Yeah.
So when you started this, then, So obviously this was a big change for you. You went from treasure hunter to, again, treasure creator. Were there any components of that really surprised you? Like maybe the preparation of the logistics of it, putting things together, the legal aspect, things like that?
I spent the better part of a decade of my career at the Walt Disney Company. And a core part of that tenure was crafting an experience for guests, a story. And I think anyone could go and make a ride. But to create an environment that surrounds that ride and something that tells a story, I think is really the key to, at least historically, to the Walt Disney Company's success. And so I wanted to have that feeling about the treasure hunt where it's not just, oh, you go and get it. Like there's something more to it. So that was a piece of it. But there's always surprises along the way. I mean, it is the modern era. It's not as romantic as going and, putting a treasure somewhere on the ground and walking away. It's just not the world we live in. So there were certainly a lot of legal aspects and so on to consider. But I'm trying to think back on it to say what was the most surprising to me. Well, one was writing a book is hard. And I'll leave that to the professionals moving forward, because it was, there were some chapters that I think went together pretty quickly, but others that took an extraordinary amount of time and a lot of iterating. And so I do not envy those writers that have to sit there day in and day out and crank something out. I mean, it's a real gift. So that one was surprising to me. I guess going in, I thought, I can crank out a book, but it's hard. And then the other thing that was probably difficult was just kind of coordination to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as you hope it will. And there's just so many aspects to that, whether it's, logistics or supply chain for books. I mean, even something as seemingly simple as like, well, what publishing path do I take when you create a book can have a tremendous impact on first impressions. You've seen some treasure hunts where, oh my gosh, there's a supply chain interruption right away, and then people are waiting months for a book. Mine certainly doesn't arrive overnight, but generally speaking, it's been a pretty steady supply chain. But those things are not easy. And actually, some of the technology components were a little challenging too. For instance, what was it? I wanted to cater toward independent booksellers, but I kind of wanted to have my cake and eat it too. I wanted to cater to them, but also not create a bottleneck where, they become the supply chain pinch point. And I actually wanted to cut out the big box guys entirely, like Amazon and all that. And so
good for you.
That's actually what I did initially was, the way to get to the book was actually sidestepping all those guys. And it actually meant that, I had to create, a whole like payment platform and all sorts of components, basically redoing what Amazon does, which was a little ambitious, and it worked okay. It's just, it's a lot to manage, and I just didn't have the time. And so at the end of the day, it was more of a compromise that I had to make there. But yeah, I mean, I could probably talk about that. Sorry to bore you guys. I mean, I could probably talk about it for days. There's just a lot of interesting things that come up that you just take for granted. Yeah.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So when you, where was I going with this? Gosh, I lost my train of thought now.
Yeah. Jump in with a question.
Sorry.
No. Not only did you said creating a book is hard. I'm sorry about that. I'm off kilter a little bit because she's sitting right by me.
I am.
Not only creating a book's hard, but creating a treasure book, right? So it's one thing to sit down and you're writing, a fictional story or just some reference book, but you have to now factor in I got to put some clues in here, right?
Well, you think about all the different types of or genres of books in the world and the scrutiny that is given to them. And I think I'd be hard pressed to think about another type of book that gets as much scrutiny as a treasure hunt book.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And,
True.
frankly, I thought I had it pretty dialed in, and very quickly people were finding genuine mistakes. And I was committed to transparency through an errata page where people could go and say, like, I made an honest mistake here. Don't waste time on this component.
Yeah.
Like, here's a correction. And that page grew, and it was slightly embarrassing for me in the sense that it's like, well, there were more errors than I really wanted there to be. And I felt like when it kind of started to stabilize, I put out a second printing to correct that stuff. But there's a lot of scrutiny given to treasure hunting books, no doubt.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So, you wanted to design this book for the masses, right? You wanted to make it approachable for a large group of people, ranging from your extreme novice first-time treasure hunters to people that's been doing it for 10 or 20 years. At the con, Treasure Con, I got to talk to some amazing minds that like, yeah, I've been treasure hunting for 20 years. I'm like, oh, geez, you don't want to talk to me. Right? I'll have you on my show, but type thing. So how did you balance that level of complexity? Because that I'm sure had to be difficult. Then you had to contend with AI too, as well, right?
Yeah, maybe I'm kind of keep overplaying the card around the Disney analogy, but it's like if you're a seasoned roller coaster rider, or if it's your first roller coaster, the roller coaster at Disneyland and World is unique, and it has enough of like a story surrounding it and a feeling surrounding it that I think both people have the potential to get equal joy from that experience. And I wanted to do the same thing with this treasure hunt, where it doesn't matter if you've been searching for treasure your entire life, or you just heard about it on Facebook one day and just decided to dive in. I really wanted as much as feasible to have a level playing field where no one felt like they were at a serious disadvantage because they just decided to jump in last minute.
Yeah. So what type of person do you ever think about, you put the treasure out there, what type of person do you think would in your mind, do you envision being the one that finds this, right?
Yeah, that was a fun exercise I went through. I actually, right before the treasure hunt was released, it was after I had hidden it, before the the Netflix and all that. I sat down and wrote a psychological profile of the type of person that I thought might find my treasure.
Interesting.
And I've locked it away, and it doesn't have any clues or anything like that in it. It's more just my thoughts around. It's not very long, but my thoughts around the type of person that would find it. So I'm actually really curious. When this all comes to fruition, I'd love to pull that out and see how far off I was.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Yeah.
Well, you're more than welcome to come on the show and talk about it. It's an open invitation.
There will be all kinds of conversations to be had at that point for sure. So do you ever picture yourself getting into the hunt side again, or are you currently engaged in any treasure hunts?
It's kind of strange, like when this Netflix thing hit and the popularity of the treasure hunt grew. I've actually had a lot of people come to me to say, hey, would you help with this project or that project? And there's several on the table right now. There's a company called, I'll probably mispronounce it. I think it's a Swedish company, Oceyon, Oceyon, I think. And they actually focus more on maritime recovery of shipwrecks and so on. They have expressed some level of interest, and conversations are ongoing. And there's other people with domestic treasure hunts that they've asked for me to partake in. And, I kind of look at it and say, I don't know I'm that qualified. I didn't find the Forrest Fenn treasure, you
were so close though.
I mean, 10 feet, 10 miles, it really, it's binary. It just wasn't close enough. I don't know, maybe a little self-critical, but I look at that situation, I kind of wonder what value I would be able to provide, but it's interesting to talk about it. And there have been a few treasure hunts that I've done some light reconnaissance for, just to kind of get a feel for it. But I haven't committed fully to any right now. And that's mainly because I just have this obsessive personality, and I'm really focused on this little tech startup thing that I'm working on right now. And I suspect like once that gets to a certain stage, then my attention will go elsewhere, and it'll probably be one of those treasures.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question. In your recreational time, I'm sure you still enjoy hiking and things like that. Is it ever crossed your mind, hey, I'm just going to go for a hike where I hid the treasure? Casually, nonchalantly, right?
It's actually changed. It has changed my daily life in a way where I get worried, like even if I'm just out on a casual hike and I bump into somebody, they're like, oh my gosh, it must be in this area because I saw him here,
Right. That's sort of
yeah. And so, for quite a while, I mean, I was pretty radical about it in the sense that I would actually do most of my hikes and walks and stuff in the middle of the night, because I didn't want to bump into people. It's like, I don't want to sway people one way or the other. But I've kind of reached a stage where it's like, I'm still going to carry on my personal life. And so I'll be out hiking and fishing. And, if I bump into you, awesome. I'd love to chat, but don't read into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was a recipient of that kind of mentality just this week. I'm downstairs on our treadmill doing an iFit hike through, I don't know, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. And on video, I see someone walk past, the trainer. I'm like, Eric, I think that was Justin. And so we had to zoom in and be like, was he caught on camera on the iFit training? So
I did look at it. And I said, where was this hike? Because I forgot that the trainer's name, but she said it was in Oregon, right?
Yeah.
I said, well, wait a minute.
Dr. Jared, someone.
Yeah. And I looked at under your picture, and it was you and your brother or something, our favorite spot in Oregon. I said, boots on the ground. We're going to go. We saw him on the trail somewhere around that time. We're boots on the ground.
Oh, I mean, there have actually been a startling number of reports sent to me, just different photos and video clips saying, is this you? Come on, be honest. Is this you?
Yeah.
Right.
And, I think it's a monumental undertaking, to travel privately and anonymously in the US. And so, I mean, I suppose the fact remains, maybe I just screwed up. Maybe somewhere along the way, somebody caught me somewhere on a video or something. I was extremely cautious, but mistakes happen. So who knows?
So when you hid your treasure, you came back and you're all excited about it, and you're about ready to announce to the world there's your treasure hunt, right? How was that feeling the night before, and then, subsequent weeks and months into it? Were you waking up middle of the night thinking, did I get contacted? Has it been found yet? I mean, that I know it would have drove me crazy.
It was an interesting time for sure. Mostly it was, I had a pretty extensive checklist of things. It's mostly around making sure that people have a smooth experience. Like the last thing I wanted is the website to crash,
Yeah.
Or, books to be unavailable. And there was one hiccup that happened. I'm trying to recall how this came together, but basically I made, that's right. The book publisher the printer that I worked with, I talked about making a change like in the metadata or something before the book was released. And so we mutually agreed we should change that. And the net effect of that change, which they didn't convey to me was, oh, your book will actually be unavailable for some amount of time while the metadata propagates globally. And so it was like right before the launch, and I couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh. And so I think there was a lot of stress on my side, mostly just because I wanted to make sure that people had a smooth experience in the beginning. But I'm thankful to say the website didn't crash, and you know, there were very few supply chain issues, so it worked out okay. But yeah, beyond that, it was just, I didn't really know what to expect. I think I had it in my mind that it was going to be this niche thing, you know, just you know, kind of a quirky little series that you know wouldn't gain much of any traction or anything. But it was just kind of wild how it turned out. I mean, it was in the Netflix top 5 or top 3 or something, and pretty much every country worldwide for, I don't know, I think it was multiple weeks. So it got a little bonkers there for a while. And, you know, I thought I had a good plan for responding to people in email, but it just kind of ran me over. I mean, it was just thousands of emails per hour, and it was a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So speaking of kind of what has happened since the hunt launched, and do you get online and kind of engage with what people are posting, Discord? So I personally, the way that we hunt, because I am limited in my bandwidth for the full experience, I don't get online. I don't read anyone else's commentary. I'm not on Discord. I'm not on any of the social media. I keep a virgin mind to everybody else's thoughts. So I don't know what's going on out there, but how do you engage? Do you read what people are thinking or posting, potential solves? Do you just kind of silently observe them and laugh or raise an eyebrow, or do you actually engage with the hunters?
So yeah, first off, your stance was actually a very similar stance that I had during the Fen treasure hunt. I really didn't engage. I mean, very occasionally I'd look at the blogs and so on, but I was pretty reticent to read them because I felt like it would change my thinking in a way that might be detrimental. And, you know, there's probably some truth to that concept of groupthink and, you know, the impact that it can have. In fact, I think I wrote something on LinkedIn about this the other day. I had to look it up. Anyway, so yeah, I do keep tabs. I'm just to set the record straight, because these rumors tend to spread, I do not engage with hunters under any aliases or anything like that.
Yeah.
I do from time to time talk to people on Discord and so on, but it's more casual chit chat. I'm never going to go in there and drop clues or something like that. I mean, especially in like a private Discord or anything to that degree. But I do have some aliases that I use purely for ingesting information as opposed to putting it out there. So, for instance, if there's a large, say, a Discord voice chat or something going on, I might pop in, and I don't want my presence to, cause a stir. And so, yeah, I might go in under an alias just to listen in and see what people are thinking. It is interesting to me. I don't know. I haven't really been in a position where, I'm like laughing at somebody's solution. To me, it's more like I'm rooting for people, and it's, you see people with good thoughts or somebody who's kind of, thinking in the right direction. And I'm just in the background thinking, keep going, keep going. But it is fun to watch in the how the mental models shift over time. And you also see these kind of factions that form in the communities that form. And it's just, I actually think it's a really intriguing, I don't know, kind of a microcosm of society. There's a lot of interesting psychology at play that's just I find intriguing to observe. Yeah.
So like Lara said, she isn't involved in that. I don't really participate much. I listen to take the temperature because I create videos and I want to know what people are interested in. So I like to provide my opinions and to the best of my ability to do that. But do you think and I think we may have an advantage with yours only because I haven't, I'll watch some channels to support them. and listen to them. But I don't really pay attention to what they're talking about because I jump in from time to time, and it would just be
clues or
like where the directions. So, and a lot of our viewers would be new to your hunt, and your hunt's been out for almost a year now.
Yeah.
Would it be you say to an advantage, disadvantage, or neutral for somebody that doesn't participate in that? Because a lot of our viewers don't participate in any social media. They would just come to a video or something,
Yeah, I think anything that is pertinent to the treasure hunt, it's important to me that there's a one-stop shop where you're basically one click away of anything that I've said or done that might be relevant. Yeah. And so that's through treasure.quest, typically an announcements page, which means, after this interview here, of course, there'll be a link to this interview on treasure.quest. And additionally, the podcast that was aired, I think this morning, or was it yesterday morning? I'm a little behind. That needs to be updated as well. So I don't think anyone has an inherent advantage by I think the Discord and YouTubes and the Facebooks, they're wonderful sources for entertainment. Sure. And I think especially for people that don't have another person to talk to about the treasure hunt, it's a great outlet.
Yeah.
But no one gets an advantage. I mean, I guess thinking through it, maybe the only way that could play out is if, say, somebody posts something somewhere that happens to be largely correct, and then another person comes in and reads it, and it's like, oh, I know the next 10%, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, those things can happen. So what I would advise to searchers is, if you have a strong solution, keep in mind that it might be strong, and maybe the thing to do is not to advertise and instead go and inspect.
Right. Yeah, that's something I think about with our channel, because I mean, we generally want to be helpful for people, especially people that are new to it, like we were and still are relatively, and make them feel like they're not alone, and but we also don't want to mislead people as well. So it is a fine line on that.
It is. It is.
But now on your Netflix clues, is Netflix going to keep that up for a while, or are we afraid that if it goes away, we lose that? Or
yeah, that's an interesting question. I think as to my uncertain knowledge, I think all Netflix original series they keep in perpetuity. So I think it will always be there as long as Netflix is in business.
Yeah.
Unless something really drastic happens. So I like to think it'll stick around. I have thought about that, in long term, what if it does go away? And I think the best that I could muster is that the book and the poem can stand on their own. The Netflix series is interesting, and it does have some clues in the series. Sure. But the treasure hunt can survive if the show did not exist.
Yeah. Well, I know we're getting close on time, but I do want to give you a little time to talk about Seeker Summit, because we're going to be there, and I encourage every one of our viewers to go. It's going to be really amazing, and I'm sure you could do better justice than me. So if you want to take a little moment to talk about it.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, so Emma and Jam of Treasure Hunter with Us are the main organizers for the event. And it is March 27th and 28th in Tucson, Arizona. I think it starts at 7 p.m. on the 27th. It's kind of a mixer that evening, and really meant to be, I think, a celebration of the 1-year release of Golden Greed. I'll be there. A lot of the people that were in the series will be there. And then, also the director and the producer. I'm still trying to convince the director of photography too. And he's a little stubborn. We'll see how that goes. Dave, I'm talking about you. So on the 28th, there's it's a large gathering. I really don't know how many people are going to show up. I think right now they're converging on 500 attendees. So I don't know where we'll land, but what we are trying for is a Guinness Book of World Records. And I think the last record was set in 2016, 2017 in Greece. somewhere around 1,400 people. And basically what it means is the most number of people in one place at one time that is doing a physical treasure hunt, one single hunt. And Guinness has a very stringent requirements on this that you need to meet in order to make it official. And so I think Emma's trying very, very hard to check all the boxes to make sure that it's a legitimate world record win. But of course, that means we need enough attendance. So, if we get there, that's great. And as I understand it, there's kind of milestones that are being set. There's multiple treasure hunt creators that'll be there. Chad Bird will be there. I hear JCB's on the fence. I would love to see him there.
Awesome.
I've certainly reached out to his team to see if if he'd be interested in attending. And then there'll be a couple panels throughout the day. I think the Golden Greed cast will be on a panel. And then we're doing a little panel on safety, both on the northern states and the southern states. Yeah. And then Nicolene Bohr is going to be there. She was on Expedition Unknown and Oak Island as well. She's very into metal detecting and conservation, so I think she's doing a session on metal detector usage. There's just be a lot of people there, and I think there's a pretty good lineup, so it should be a good time for everybody.
So who designed the hunt that's going to happen while we're all there?
I have been tasked with this duty. I guess I should really start thinking about that, huh? So, it's in order to have this be a legitimate treasure hunt and be in line with the rules and regulations of Arizona and the Attorney General, it is a game of skill. It is not a game of chance. You will not need to go off-site in order to complete the treasure hunt. It will all be within the confines of the venue, which is the Tucson Expo Center. In terms of more details there, in terms of legalities in Arizona is very strict around, what they consider gambling and games of chance. So in this case, it is unfortunately for people 21 and older. Certainly anybody can come to the event of any age, but for the treasure hunt portion itself, there is an age requirement by law. And I think that's really the net of it. There's a lot of interesting things to consider for a treasure hunt in a constrained venue like this, both from a crowd perspective and technology perspective. So it'll be a fun challenge.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to it, and I really want to thank you for coming on. It means a lot to us, and we, I'm sure our viewers, and we really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, guys. It was such a delight to meet you guys in Vegas, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the summit.
Absolutely. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you
so much, Justin.
Good night.
Hey.